All right, we've talked about the three main macroeconomic measurements to look and see how the economy is doing: gross domestic product, or GDP, unemployment, and inflation. Now, the government only has two sets of policy tools with which to manipulate these three things: fiscal policy and monetary policy. Fiscal policy just means financial policy. It means financial in relation to a government. And so it's deliberate changes in government spending and taxation, spending more, spending less, taxing more, taxing less, designed to achieve high employment, low inflation, and growing GDP. The other set of tools is called monetary policy. That's manipulating the three measures by raising and lowering the money supply, which also raises and lowers interest rates. That is the purview of the Federal Reserve Bank. And we're going to save monetary policy and money in banking for our last unit. But we are going to talk about fiscal policy before this next test. Fiscal policy is the purview essentially of Congress, with some input, signing or vetoing by the President. Now, the goal of fiscal policy is to stabilize the economy. And there are two kinds of stabilizers: automatic and discretionary. Automatic stabilizers are those that work automatically through no action by Congress. For example, marginal tax rates. As you are aware, the more you make, the higher proportion of your income on that higher part that you pay in taxes. That's good because regardless of how you feel about that, it automatically stabilizes the economy. If income is rising on the whole, the government sucks out more. That prevents a boom. If the country's income is falling, the government sucks out less. That puts a floor on consumption and GDP. That's one example. Unemployment insurance is an example. You become unemployed, you can go collect unemployment insurance. That happens automatically, and that gives you some money with which to consume. So that also puts a floor under the economy. Those things are automatic. Discretionary stabilizers are those changes at the option of the federal government to increase or decrease spending or change tax rates. For instance, Congress decides to initiate a major highway project to create jobs. That's something they're going to have to vote to do. And that's the key difference to remember. Automatic happens automatically. That makes sense. Discretionary, Congress has to vote. Congress uses their discretionary power. Now, just as there are two kinds of stabilizers in fiscal policy, there are two kinds of overall fiscal policy. The first is expansionary. When a recession occurs, expansionary policy may be in order. Such a policy seeks to expand input. When in a recession, we want to get GDP back up. There are only three ways to do this: increase government spending, cut taxes to give people more income to encourage consumption, or some combination of both. Now, expansionary fiscal policy typically results in a budget deficit. Deficit is when the government spends more than it earns. And obviously, if we're increasing spending and or cutting taxes, we're going to spend more than we earn. And so, understandably, most people understand and accept that expansionary policy is sometimes necessary and will create a budget deficit. The other type of fiscal policy is contractionary policy. We've got demand pull inflation occurring. The economy is just overheating. We're headed for a boom. Then contractionary policy may be in order. It seeks to prevent a bubble by doing one of three things. The opposite of the expansionary is three things. You can decrease government spending to try and pull down GDP a little bit. You can increase taxes, suck some more money out of the economy, or some combination of both. Now, contractionary fiscal policy should result in a budget surplus. We're cutting spending and or increasing taxes, revenue to the government. We should get a surplus. We should be making more money than we're spending. Now, which is the preferable method for dealing with a recession, which like the one we just had, adjusting government spending or adjusting taxes? By the way, everything I've talked about so far, most people are in agreement with. Most politicians, most economists think that a recession calls for expansionary policy. Most politicians and economists agree that a boom calls for contractionary policy. They differ on how to achieve that. What's best for a recession? adjusting spending or adjusting taxes. It depends on whether you think the government is too large or too small. Now, you're probably thinking, well, nobody thinks the government's too small. A better way to put it is you think the government could do more. And in a recession, economists who think that the government could do more, that there are unmet social needs, unmet infrastructure needs. For example, not everybody has health care. Economists who see government playing a role in that, or who see government needing to build some high-speed trains or improving highways. They would prefer in a recession to increase spending. And during inflation, a boom, they would prefer to increase taxes. Conversely, economists who think the government is too large and too inefficient prefer, during a recession, to decrease taxes rather than increase spending. And those same people during inflation would decrease government spending rather than increasing taxes. The issue here is taxes. The people in the first camp who think government could do more, they don't want to ever cut taxes because they think the government has needs it needs to meet and needs income and revenue to do that. These people in the bottom camp, they don't want to ever increase spending because they don't want to make government larger. Obviously, one of these people tend to be on the one of these groups tends to be on the political right and one on the political left. We'll talk about that in class.